Welcome back to Pop Dissected. Today, we're going to be discussing why Kesha's second studio record, Warrior, underperformed in comparison to her debut record, Animal. Let's recap Kesha's success prior to Warrior. And important to note, all these certifications are from December of 2018. Animal reached number 1 on the Billboard 200 and has been certified 3 times platinum. Its 4 singles have all been certified 2 times platinum or higher. Additionally, all 4 of the singles reached the top 10 of the Hot 100. Kesha's follow-up EP, Cannibal, peaked at 15 on the Billboard 200 and has since been certified platinum. It spawned We Are Who We Are, which hit number 1 on the Hot 100 and has been certified 5 times platinum. The EP's other single, Blow, was also a top 10 hit and has been certified 4 times platinum. All of Kesha's 6 singles from her first record and EP were top 10 hits, 2 of them peaking at number 1. Following the release of the single Blow on February 8th of 2011, Kesha embarked on the Get Sleazy tour just a week later on February 15th. The tour ran until September 29th of that year and grossed $62 million from reported numbers. So we can see, Kesha had a very impressive run with her first record cycle, but things seemed to dramatically shift for her once she entered the Warrior era. But before we dive into that, be sure to drop a like and subscribe for more future content on all your favorite pop stars. Now, we're going to first look at the record cycle for Warrior before diving into other personal components of what was going on during this time. In June of 2010, Kesha had already begun to tease a second record. She stated how she wanted to grow with a new record and try something new, yet still retain the established image she's known for. While on the Get Sleazy tour in 2011, Kesha began writing songs for her second record. Now, the record had initially been slated for a release at the end of 2011, but if we remember what Kesha said back in June of the previous year, she wanted the record to be something new. So, this second record ultimately got delayed because of Kesha wanting to try a new musical approach, this time experimenting with rock and roll. In February of 2012, Kesha said herself the record was slated for a May release of that year, but she said she was still writing songs at that time. May came and went, and the record wasn't released. So far, the record had seemingly been delayed twice. This is a problem in itself. Pushed back release dates are indicative of trouble, meaning something isn't going as planned. We know Kesha initially pushed back the record to expand upon her own creative experimentation, but there didn't seem to be a reason behind the record being delayed past May. Recording began in January of 2012, so I'd say the label and her team saw no way to write, record, master, and then begin a single rollout for this record in a matter of 5 months. The Warrior era would officially begin with the record's first single, Die Young. The track released September 25th of 2012. It debuted at 13 on the Hot 100 and 21 on the Billboard Pop Songs chart, becoming Kesha's highest entry on the chart. After 3 weeks of charting, Die Young reached number 8 on the Hot 100, officially continuing Kesha's string of top 10 hits. Slowly, the track rose to number 2 on its 10th week, the week of December 8th, ready to overthrow Rihanna's Diamonds and become Kesha's 3rd number 1 single as a lead artist. However, on December 14th, the Sandy Hook elementary school shootings occurred. Because of the death of 20 children, the lyrics of Die Young were heavily criticized. And just a day after the shooting, Die Young was pulled from numerous radio stations, losing over 19 million listeners. However, this did not impact the track that much, as it continued to stay at number 3 on the chart for a few weeks after. However, because of the single's unintended association with the Sandy Hook shooting, many people became opposed to Kesha and the song's content. Kesha sent out a series of tweets. One offered her condolences to those affected by the tragedy, and she remarked why she knew her song was inappropriate for the time. She then stated she was forced to sing the lyrics of Die Young and was opposed to them. She then retracted her statement, clarifying it, saying that she was only concerned about the title of the song, yet still stood behind the song's message. Nonetheless, the Sandy Hook shooting impacted the song, and how a lot of people viewed Kesha. The record's second single, Come On, released November 16th of 2012. The track peaked at 27 on the Hot 100, ending Kesha's trail of top 10 hits. While the song received positive reviews, it was noted for being a generic pop track. It didn't really capture much of what made people love Kesha. One reviewer even said Come On was almost a parody of her own tracks, such as TikTok and Take It Off. While the track isn't bad, some look back at the record and think there were much better single choices that better reflected the record. Die Young was a fun track about living life to the fullest. It was a different side of TikTok, essentially. We Are Who We Are was an anthemic track about embracing your individuality. Blah 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 and Take It Off were raunchy tracks that pushed the envelope. But Come On, in comparison, was just seen as basic, boring, and formulaic. Now, honestly, I love the song, and it's one of my favorites off Warrior, but at the time of its release, Die Young was still rising on the charts, and Come On just wasn't as strong, so it didn't perform well. The record's third and final single was Crazy Kids, released April 30th of 2013. The biggest issue is the time between this single and Come On. With Come On peaking lower than one may have expected and Die Young being pulled from radio stations, a third single would have been needed sooner rather than this much later. I have to say, when this track became a single, I wasn't exactly excited for it. As one critic said of Come On, I think Crazy Kids seems to parody Kesha's other party anthems. The rhymes are fun and the production is interesting, but will.i.am's verse is dreadful, and Juicy J's just doesn't add that much. It's kind of unnecessary. Crazy Kids just doesn't seem to represent what Warrior is about. Kesha stated the theme of Warrior is finding one's own inner strength, and it's clear she wanted a positive and almost responsible intention for the record. But the latter two singles don't display this. Even Die Young doesn't, but it's a lead single meant to captivate the general public, and it was still on brand for Kesha. It wasn't repetitive or unfocused, which is how some saw both Come On and Crazy Kids. Crazy Kids was just a poor single choice. It released too late, and it didn't reflect the record's intentions, and it just had unnecessary collaborators. The track peaked at number 40 on the Hot 100, becoming Kesha's lowest peaking single at the time. Now, onto the record. Warrior released November 30th of 2012, peaking at number 6 on the Billboard 200 with 85,000 copies. Since its release, it's only sold 500,000 copies in the United States, being certified gold. With how huge Animal was, Warrior was paling in comparison. Now, of course, we can attribute Die Young getting pulled from radio stations as a factor of the record's performance, but Die Young didn't hit its peak position until after Warrior was released. Additionally, it wasn't pulled from radio stations until after the record released. So while the track being pulled surely affected the record's longevity and how people saw Kesha, it wasn't exactly a huge hit before the record released. Thus, the mass interest wasn't entirely there. Come On didn't help the record that much, as we discussed, and Crazy Kids, released so far after the record, its impact doesn't really matter. But as stated, Kesha wanted Warrior to be more rock and roll driven, and said it would be a growth from Animal. If you listen to Warrior, the rock and roll influences are far and few between, and most of this record just seems like a copy and paste of Animal. Off the 16-track deluxe edition, I'd say there are only about 5 tracks that really showcase the rock and roll genre being implemented. If you look at the Warrior liner notes, Kesha's former music producer served as an executive producer, and he has production and writing credits on 12 of the 16 total tracks. The tracks Past Lives and Love Into the Light are the only tracks written solely by Kesha, and neither of them have production credits from her former music producer. And those two tracks sound very different from the rest of the record. Love Into the Light is an anti-bully anthem, and Past Lives is about a true love succeeding through different times in the world. These two tracks are wonderful, and they really show the depth of Kesha's writing and creativity, yet they're all buried behind these overproduced electronic tracks that were pushed onto her. And I think it's safe to say, Kesha's former music producer literally controlled this record and what its outcome would be. When looking at Animal's liner notes, Kesha's former music producer only had writing and production credits on a total of 7 of the 14 standard tracks. That's just half the record, compared to the 3/4 of Warrior. Her record was being controlled. Machine Gun Love was a track Kesha desperately wanted on the record, but it was rejected for not being pop enough. Additionally, we know Kesha wrote a lot of songs with her mother for Warrior, most of which were tossed out once Kesha's former music producer joined the project. This record was creatively stinted and determined by Dr. Luke. What I'm about to say may be upsetting to some, but it will be brief as it pertains to this period of time in Kesha's life. If you don't want to hear about it, then you can skip to this time. We are aware Kesha endured abuse while working with her former producer. We don't know exactly when these horrific incidents took place, but it wouldn't be far off to say that there could have been some abuse going on during this time, which likely affected Kesha's passion and dedication to the era. However, we do know during this time, Kesha was being ridiculed for her body, which led to her eventual eating disorder. It's unimaginable to think about what Kesha was emotionally and mentally going through. Her career was being dictated for her, and she had to work with a man who was abusive and, frankly, evil. Anyway, it seems that because of how Kesha succeeded with Animal, her former producer wanted to hold on to that formula and do everything in his power to make sure the Warrior era and record could capture that same success. But in the end, Warrior seemed hollow. It lacked the growth Kesha had promised, and the growth many people were looking forward to. It seems like a redone, watered-down version of her first record. It simply came across as inauthentic. Kesha was known as the wild party girl with Animal, but Warrior didn't help expand upon that image in really any way. Instead, Kesha was seen as self-parodying, and frankly, untalented. She hadn't shown any growth with Warrior. And of course, we know this isn't her fault. Her career during this time was practically determined for her. Despite Kesha's immense popularity, it was common for people to see her as talentless. Many people believed she hid behind auto-tune, her music was just dirty, and that she wasn't a positive role model. Yet Warrior was the record that, in a way, was going to change a lot of this, from her image to her sound to the story she was telling with her music. And you can even see that in some of the tracks that are on the record now. But after promising artistic growth and not being able to deliver upon it, then releasing a record that seemingly rehashed her first, people were just over Kesha. And it's sad. But while Kesha has enjoyed a new wave of success with the release of her third record, Rainbow, the Warrior era really hurt her career. But it was with factors that were entirely out of her control, because she had no control. Her record's content became largely out of her hands. The single choices, the tracks included, and the record's sound essentially became dictated for her. And I don't think people immediately knew this at the time, but I think people realized there just wasn't something genuine this time around with Kesha and her music. And as I've said many times before, a reviewer felt Kesha was parodying herself with Come On, so it's easy to conclude many may have felt the same way. Reviews of the record were mixed to positive, but many said they felt Kesha was sticking to a predictable formula, and they were not pleased with her fixing what isn't broken, in reference to the new rock and roll influences on the record. With Kesha not being able to record the record she wanted, the attempt to grow and experiment with her music came across as cheap, and people didn't really take her serious. Through it all, the issue with Warrior is that the record just isn't what it was meant to be. The track listing, direction, sound, and content of the record is not 100% what Kesha even wanted. I think the general public just got tired of Kesha's predominantly party girl image, and they believed she wasn't evolving into anyone with substance. Kesha was known for her big singles, not necessarily her hidden gems or deep cuts off her first efforts. Many people didn't truly realize how talented and amazing Kesha is. Thus, she was written off by many with this era. Warrior, while full of fond memories for Kesha's fans, really hurt her career. She was promoting a record that wasn't something she was passionate about. It wasn't her true voice or image. She was being creatively controlled, and her career was out of her hands, unfortunately. Not only that, but she had an ongoing legal battle with her former music producer, so she was unable to work, and as her own lawyer said, it seriously hurt her career. While Kesha may not have the heights of her Animal days, she doesn't need to. Success isn't always about being number one or having huge sales. Success is self-defined, and I think as long as Kesha is making music, is able to be authentic, and is loving her life, then she is successful. And as I've said before, as long as the artist is happy with their life and what they're doing, that's all that matters. If we look at Kesha now, she's in such a positive, inspiring, and happy place in her career. She seems to be embracing life to the fullest and is making music that she loves. And with her fourth record, High Road, on the way, we've still got a lot more to look forward to from Kesha. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. Comment down below your thoughts on Warrior, and be sure to drop a like and subscribe for more future content on all your favorite pop stars.